Today on CityLine, a conversation with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jessica Brown. Parts of Boston, Cambridge, Chelsea, and other communities all make up Massachusetts' 7th Congressional District. Today, we're sitting down with the woman who represents them.
These are unprecedented and uncertain times.
In 2019, Representative Ayanna Pressley was sworn into office. The Democrat has been a vocal critic of President Trump ever since.
No kings, just one bald queen.
As a voice for immigrants, Pressley just celebrated a big win, forcing a vote to extend temporary protected status for Haitians.
I'm just elated, and this is just such a reminder of the power of organizing.
Pressley is also an advocate for survivors' justice.
For too long, survivors have suffered in silence while abusers have carried on without consequence.
This morning, she discusses the big issues in Washington, from birthright citizenship to the war in Iran. I'm here now with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Good to be with you.
Yeah, let's get right into it here, because let's talk about the war in Iran. It's now stretched in now for over a month. Hundreds of people have been killed at this point. Millions of people have been displaced. And the global oil market has seen major disruptions. In your view, is U.S. involvement in this war a mistake?
Well, first of all, it's an unauthorized war. Congress had no say in this. It's an unauthorized war. It's a reckless escalation. There's no strategic end game that's been provided. There's been no evidence offered as to whether or not this is in the interest of the safety of Americans or global security in any way. He alleges, Donald Trump, that there was an imminent threat, but within the Pentagon, there are even higher ups who left because in their expertise, in their opinion, that there is no imminent threat. Donald Trump ran saying that he was going to be a peace president, but the facts don't bear that out. We're in an unauthorized war. It was a reckless escalation. There's no strategic end game, no evidence that this is in the interest of American safety or global security. And he renamed the Department of Defense the Department of War. And that tells you everything that you need to know. And so in the meantime, this has destabilized families. It's put service members in harm's way. People have been robbed of their lives. And we're spending $1 billion a day. Meanwhile, people can't access housing that is affordable or health care that is accessible, affordable, in quality. People are having Medicaid cut and SNAP benefits cut, so you're denying hungry people food. Donald Trump ran saying that he was going to address affordability, but he's attacking everything and everyone except for affordability.
Let's talk about the Supreme Court, because we know the Supreme Court is now considering President Trump's executive order seeking to end birthright citizenship. The president even attended oral arguments. That's a historic first for a sitting president. What do you make of this effort from the White House?
Well, Donald Trump being in attendance, you cited it as historic, but again, this is an administration that continues to make history for all the wrong reasons. That was an intimidation tactic meant to influence the courts, but the fact of the matter is birthright citizenship is exactly that. It is a birthright. It's been enshrined in our Constitution for a century. It's a guarantee of equality. Remember why it was established in the first place. A guarantee of equality in the face of slavery and oppression. And the justice is understood. This is the law, and we must uphold the law. So birthright citizenship is exactly that. It is a birthright.
The Department of Homeland Security shutdown, let's talk about that. It's become the longest partial government shutdown in U.S. history. The shutdown caused record-breaking lines at airports across the country. TSA agents quitting left and right after going weeks without pay. You know, in your view, whose fault was the shutdown?
Well, let's just remember how we got here. First of all, this has been under a Republican majority. Congress has been incredibly dysfunctional, and the people do deserve a functional government. We've been funding the government on these short-term, continuing resolutions, which is incredibly dysfunctional and disruptive. And how we got here specific to the issue of DHS is that there are masked, rogue federal law enforcement agents that have waged a campaign of terror on our communities, moving in ways that are unlawful, unconscionable, and unconstitutional, alleging that this is being done in the name of law and order, but all the while violating people's constitutional rights to due process, alleging that this is being done in the name of public safety, but all the while making everyone less safe. When you have a campaign of terror, everyone is less safe. So you had documented, undocumented, citizens, non-citizens, black, white, brown, LGBTQ, disabled, young and old, being terrorized by this campaign. And taxpayers are funding that. And the majority of the people in this country do not want to fund that. And so when it comes to the pain currently being experienced while we are in this fight, to say not one more dime, in my opinion, I should be defunded and abolished. And I've been saying that since I ran for Congress in 2018. But the pain that's being felt by our TSA agents, I'm deeply sensitive to the disruption of their livelihoods and lives, and I value the essential role that they play when it comes to our safety. I have many constituents who are gainfully employed at Boston Logan International Airport, but the fact of the matter is that the Senate has had 9 opportunities to fund the essential work of our TSA workers, and they have chosen not to do that. So I think it's important to remember how we got here, and they have gone unpaid because of choices that have been made.
Your discharge petition recently forced a House vote on extending TPS, temporary protected status, for Haitians. What does this currently mean for the thousands of Haitian families living under TPS, including so many here in Boston?
Sure. Well, first, let me just say that because of the dysfunction of Congress, we have had to use the workaround of a discharge petition to force a vote on consequential things. We did it when it came to the Epstein files, to the Affordable Care Act. And in 40 years, there have only been 15 discharge petitions to reach that 218 threshold, and mine is one of those 15. So I'm very proud of the work, the strategy, the whip effort by my office and the coalition that we built nationally, resulting in that majority of those 218 signatures to force a vote. There are 350,000 Haitian nationals in this country. I represent the 3rd largest Haitian diaspora in the country. I co-chair the House Haiti Caucus. And for me, this is a matter of keeping families together. It's the acknowledgement that deporting those Haitian nationals back to Haiti, a country that is politically destabilized, been ravaged by national disasters, the assassination of their president, rampant gang violence, that is a death sentence. And moreover, to separate families and to threaten several industries where many Haitian nationals make great contributions: healthcare, construction, hospitality. And so that is why I'm leading this fight. And we are currently in legislative recess, but when I return to Washington and we are back in session, that discharge petition has 7 days to ripen. 2 days to sort of call the question, to call the vote, if you will. I have every reason to believe that those signatures will hold, translate to votes. It will pass the House, and then we take this fight to the Senate.
You know, President Trump signed an executive order to create a nationwide list of verified eligible voters to restrict mail-in voting. Now, this comes as the U.S. Senate is considering the Save America Act, which would require photo ID at polling places and make states get proof of citizenship before registering a voter in federal elections. You know, what is the end goal here?
Well, I mean, I think it's very clear. Donald Trump does not want a multiracial, multicultural democracy. His agenda is an anti-freedom agenda. It means to control and degrade free speech, the free press, the freedom of your body, your bodily autonomy. It means to control what books you read. It's an anti-freedom agenda. And the SAVE Act is voter suppression flat out. It is just a new iteration of Jim Crow, and it puts the burden on voters in such a way that it would disenfranchise military voters, rural voters, and certainly women, that in order to prove that you are a citizen, you would need your birth certificate or limited numbers of ID. 146 million people in this country don't own a passport. And they would have to pay $130, again, which given the economic hardship for so many right now, that is just out of reach for people. And then for the women of this country, your birth certificate does not line up with your legal name in many instances if you've been married and changed your name. And so you're putting the burden on the voter to then pursue additional forms of ID to prove their citizenship. And by the way, this is a very typical play by the Republicans, which is a solution in search of a problem. This is not a problem. It is already against the law for non-citizens to vote. Jessica, I just spoke with you about the campaign of terror that is existing right now for our undocumented neighbors. So I don't think that there are any non-citizens that are clamoring to go and vote illegally, lest they be targeted, profiled, unlawfully detained, and deported. It just doesn't make sense. But none of this is rooted in data, none of it's rooted in facts, none of it's rooted in reality. It's just rooted in cruelty. And that is really the point. It's an anti-freedom agenda, and it would disenfranchise millions of voters of color, rural voters, military service members, and certainly women.
We have much more to talk about here coming up. Our conversation continues after the break.